Are psychedelic visuals real? I've spent a very long time studying this question, or just hallucinating that I was studying this question, and this video is going to go through a wide variety of perspectives to give you not just an answer, but an understanding of how much more complicated this is than it seems. Now, if you've tried a psychedelic, you probably know just how real the experience feels, hence these guys, and if you haven't tripped, don't worry, I've got some good explanations for you too. For those of us who have ventured into the psychedelic fractal though, it's likely that from your perspective, it felt even more real than this reality, especially if you've tried the higher doses. You know when you wake up from a dream and you're like, oh, it was just a dream, of course I wasn't having a twerk off with Shrek and E.T., how ridiculous. Not that I've dreamt that. Somehow, smoking DMT makes this life on Earth feel like a dream in the same way. The experiential realness of the experience is so far beyond the realness of physical life that it really does feel like waking up from the dream of life. Now, we could be naive and just automatically assume DMT hyperspace is real and sober reality is an illusion, but a materialist is always going to say, hey, the brain is very capable of tricking itself. How do you know that's not just a drug experience that feels more real than physical reality, but it's still just a hallucination? I bet some of you right now are waiting for me to absolutely destroy that perspective like Shrek destroyed me in that twerk off. I mean hypothetical person's twerk off. But first off, I should mention that they actually have a point. For you, who experience the more realness, it's obvious that physical reality is the dream and DMT is the waking up, but in my opinion, shaming and dismissing the people who haven't had the experience for not agreeing isn't the solution either. If you needed evidence to come to that conclusion, there's nothing wrong with someone else also needing evidence, and even if they have tried it and have a higher threshold for how much evidence they need, I'm not gonna blame them for not believing it. It's also partially my fault that I can't meet their threshold, and I don't think it's unreasonable for people to want more evidence. It's not really anyone's fault. So here's my attempt to meet that threshold, give it a side hug, and tell it that maybe it isn't as simple as all drug experiences are hallucinations. Let's first look at this from a materialist perspective and see where it takes us. I think most of us can agree that the experiences we have are correlated with the functioning of our brain. If you see something in this video that reinforces your worldview, your body will give you some nice feeling chemicals which will get you a teeny bit high. Sorry YouTube, I really can't help it. The experience we're having now is happening with the neurotransmitter serotonin constantly binding to our receptors right in this very moment. So you materialists generally believe that you're perceiving a physical, external, objective reality, and serotonin is capable of allowing you to do that. Though according to most materialists, when this one binds to our receptors, it's a hallucination, whilst this one binding to the same receptors is showing us a real reality and is not a hallucination. Remember, this is the one we evolved to survive, and survival means excluding unnecessary information, so doesn't it seem like a huge assumption that this neurotransmitter is the one true and only way of perceiving real reality, and any of these other configurations just make us hallucinate things that aren't real? To rephrase that question, is the line between hallucination and reality a solid objective line, or do things get a bit blurry? What even makes something real? If an alien was in the room with you now and it didn't use serotonin for its perception, is it hallucinating? Well, not necessarily, right? And why? Because it sees the same things we do, it has consensus with us. But then, this also applies to DMT trips, where people report seeing the same entities, the same places, the same patterns, the same messages, so we can't say consensus is the criteria if we're still dismissing psychedelic experiences as not real. I'm not denying that serotonin lets us see reality, but what evidence do we have that DMT doesn't? Empirically speaking, we have none, so personally I feel that if we were truly being scientific here, we shouldn't so quickly invalidate and dismiss people's profound, life-changing experiences as just hallucinations. So does this mean when you see Jesus in your trip, you're really seeing Jesus? Well, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying when you see Jesus, that experience of seeing Jesus is very real for you, and the very mechanism that is causing you to see that Jesus is in many ways the same mechanism that is causing you to see the screen in front of you. So whilst we could say that relative to sober reality, seeing Jesus on DMT is a hallucination, we could equally say relative to the DMT reality, seeing your screen in sober reality is a hallucination. And how do we actually objectively determine which one is the real reality when it's so easy to get tripped up in bias? If you haven't noticed yet, I'm modeling a spectrum where on one side we have the DMT is real, serotonin is an illusion argument, and on the other we have the serotonin is real, DMT is an illusion argument. Now somewhere closer to the middle, what if both sides are an illusion? You'll hear a lot of spiritual gurus saying reality itself is an illusion, but the problem here is that culturally, illusion is generally taken to mean not real or false. Of course, I think they're therefore I am. So if we're defining illusion to mean non-existent, well of course reality exists and is therefore not an illusion. You have proof that you exist right in front of you. Because of this, I feel that this everything is an illusion perspective is heavily misinterpreted, because these gurus aren't necessarily saying reality doesn't exist and nothing is real. They're saying reality can always be seen in different ways, so any one particular way of seeing things is ultimately misleading. Some animals see infrared or ultraviolet light, and what these gurus mean is that our perspective where we don't see that light is in a sense illusory because it misses out on information that could potentially recontextualize the underlying nature of something. In the same way that if a dog looks at the color red, it won't really see red because it doesn't have the cones to perceive it. The dog's vision is in a sense illusory when compared to how a human might look at the same red colored thing. That doesn't mean the dog doesn't see anything, his vision is just limited in comparison. Another perspective many people hold is that both sides are real. After all, I again think therefore I am, and both experiences have a reality to them regardless of whether we're currently able to explain how they relate to each other. If something feels real, who is anyone to come and say it isn't? Sure, it might not be real relative to X thing, but it also might be real relative to Y thing, so to come and invalidate its realness as if there's no reality to it at all objectively doesn't make any sense to me. My personal conclusion here is that both the DMT and the sober experience are real to a degree, and both are unreal to a degree. There has to be some unrealness to the sober experience, otherwise DMT wouldn't feel more real relative to it. And likewise, even a DMT breakthrough experience must have some unrealness to it. We could always even theoretically take a higher dose and get more realness out of it anyways. So you could say I take the all of the above perspective. There are still so many more angles and arguments that both sides can make, and I can't go through them all in one video, but hopefully you're happy with my dumbed down generalizations and got enough out of it to hallucinate hitting like and subscribe for more imaginary psychedelic videos like this one. Also, feel free to contribute your own perspective in the comments. I love reading them and learning more about these topics. Have a nice day, everyone.